All right, well, thank you for joining me, Thibault. Welcome to the Transforming Esports Podcast. Um, I guess we'll start off with the simple question: How did you get here? What was your journey into esports like?
Um, I think it started like the same way it starts for most people. I was just an esports fan, watching mostly. I come from the League of Legends scene actually. I've been on Valorant only since I joined G2, and yeah, I've been a League fan since I think season two. Watching most esports competitions, and yeah, at some point I just realized that my knowledge about the game was pretty good. I was just a terrible player, so I was like, okay, maybe I can try to get into coaching. So yeah, that's how I started, pretty much in like very small amateur teams in France. And yeah, I was studying at the same time. Wasn't really passionate about what I was studying, so I think it was like just super random. One day I was in the car going to work, and I heard about this new business management school opening in France that was like specialized in gaming and esports. I was like, that sounds so super cool. I'm gonna look into that. So yeah, I just looked into it. Decided that yeah, I'm not gonna stay in this like in the industry I was in for forever. So I was like, all right, I'm still young. Let's just give it a try. And yeah, I was lucky enough to have like supportive parents, I would say, because it's not always easy to tell your parents, yeah, I'm gonna quit the engineering stuff and I'm just gonna go into gaming and esports. See how it goes. And yeah, I mean they trusted me. They trusted the school too. And yeah, that's pretty much when things like really started for me because I got to meet a lot of people obviously passionate about esports, just like me. And yeah, at first we were like, okay, we made it into this school it was pretty selective. And so we were like, okay, all the partners of the school they're just gonna hire us, and we're gonna join the best clubs. At the time, Vitality was one of the partner of the school, and yeah, we quickly realized that yeah, we didn't have enough experience for that. So yeah, we basically decided to create our own experience, and we just built like the esports club of the school. We started like super small with like a League of Legends team. I was the coach back then, and yeah, we just grew bit by bit. We got some pretty decent results on like local French lands, like the biggest ones, like the Lyon Sport, the Gamers Assembly, and stuff like this. And yeah, basically the school realized that okay, those guys they're really passionate about what they're doing. They're not even paid, and they're having like actual results, in those tournaments with like yeah, we literally had no budget. We just had enough, to go to the LAN and yeah, we're hoping to make some money out of the prize pool. But yeah, they realized that okay, they're invested and they're working pretty well. So what happened is that basically after the first year, um, the school signed a pretty big partnership with like a football club that wanted to get into esports, and they were basically asking the school to um, take care of and hire the staff to take care of their esports teams, basically. So yeah, they wanted to start on League of Legends and Fortnite. So after seeing how I worked for a year, they decided to yeah basically take me to be the manager of the whole project. So that's basically when I switched to like full-time managing instead of coaching, which was yeah the best decision ever because I wasn't that good of a coach, I think, looking back at it. And yeah, that's how it started. So with League of Legends and Fortnite, I basically spent 2 years in this football club, just getting some experience under my belt. We were competing in the second French league on League of Legends. Got pretty close to qualify for LFL. Unfortunately, we didn't make it. So yeah, it just like at that time we ended up not qualifying for LFL. It was the end of my studies. I just graduated, and yeah, it was like 2 years with this football club, and I felt like I pretty much saw everything and learned everything I could learn from the club because like it's a football club, they were not super invested into the esports side of things, so it was a bit frustrating for me because I was basically running the thing and they were just saying approving the budget basically and trusting me with what I was doing with it. So it was cool, like I learned a lot for during those 2 years, but yeah, I also wanted to join a bigger project and actually learn from people, so then yeah, it was the right timing since I finished my studies and I started looking into yeah full-time positions. And yeah, I got a few contacts in LFL, still on the League of Legends side, but nothing ended up working. And yeah, I just ended up having like a full month of like work research. And the same week, I got two offers on the table, both for Valorant. One of them was G2 for the Gozen project. And yeah, I basically got to pick between those two offers, which was a bit crazy for me, just coming out of my studies and not really having experience in big clubs. So it was like a really big opportunity and a bit scary at first, when I got the offer from G2, I was like, bro, you just finished school, like is it really the time to go in such a big organization and stuff? So it was a bit scary at first, and then I was like, okay, I will just try. Worst case, what can happen? Worst case, I get fired, and I just joined the other team because I'm sure they would be happy to have me also. So yeah, I just went for it, and yeah, I've been working with the same team now for almost 3 years. It's gonna be 3 years in October.
Hmm.
And yeah, just having the best time of my life. We're, I think, very successful, and I just have a group of, I'm working on the daily basis with the group of people that I really like, which makes everything so much easier.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the like the main takeaways I got from managing at this level is that like to a certain point, it doesn't matter who you get on the team as long as it's people that are on the same page, share the same values and vision on how we should work. It's gonna work to a certain point. So yeah, that's pretty much how I made it here.
That's a really interesting journey. So fan to engineer, almost to coach
Yeah.
to manager.
Yeah.
Um, I think that works really well into the next question I had is kind of understanding and kind of painting the picture of what the role of the manager is. And what's really beneficial here is you've seen the coaching side and you see the manager side. So what is the main difference between the coach and the manager?
Well, I guess it depends the org you're working in. Like for example, the work I was doing as a manager for this football club was totally different than the one I'm doing for G2 right now because, as you can imagine, G2 is way bigger and there's like extra tasks in general. But I would say that in general, the role of the manager is to extract the best out of the people you have in your team and just put them in the best conditions possible to perform. That's, I would say, the one sentence that can sum it up. But I would say that there's two aspects of the manager role in G2. The first one is more the admin side of things because G2 is a big company actually. I don't know if people from the outside realize how much people are working behind the scenes outside of the teams. Like we have a huge content team, um, merch team, social team, obviously, and yeah, a lot of people also supporting us, on the finance side, legal side, and everything. So as a manager in G2, you're really the point of contact between the team and the rest of the company. So every time there's a request, any kind of topic that is like linked to the team, it goes through me because I'm the one who knows the team's planning. I'm the one basically creating it with the rest of the team. So I know what we can do and when we can do it. And I would say that the biggest part on the admin side is well making sure we facilitate the work of our partnership team because obviously in esports we have to like we get a lot of our income from sponsoring, right? So we have deliverables and usually content work to do for those partners and a big part of it is managing when are we going to do this and with who we're going to do it based on what's going on in the team on a daily basis. And basically the other part of the job is managing the team on a daily basis. So it goes from like preparing the schedule, making sure we're, you know, uh, working enough or managing energy levels, I would say, based on the what time of the year we're in, because like the way we're working with this team is mainly remote. So we spend most of our time at home practicing, but we also have like pretty long periods of I would call like off season in between each stage that we have to compete in. So we don't want the players to burn out during those long periods where there's like no real competition, and we need to make sure we use as efficiently as possible this time at home practicing, but also that make sure that we peak at the right moment, right? So the daily I would say that the daily work with the team is like it represents most of my work. So as I said, like planning, scheduling, uh, making sure that everyone is doing their job, like making sure everyone is held accountable. I think that that's a big part of it. one of the things we do at the beginning of the year when like we build a new team is that we agree basically on our values. We decide, okay, how are we going to work together and how this is going to look like, and we try to be as detailed as possible, to make sure that, yeah, along the year, everyone knows what they have to do, how they have to do it, and yeah, basically, so we can be as efficient as possible. And then, yeah, I would say that in general, the role of the manager is also to, in the first place, build a group of people that are gonna be able to work together, because I think that in esports, you like I think it's easy to recognize, okay, those players are the best. Let's put them together and it's gonna work, right? It doesn't really work like this in reality. You have to make sure that those people are gonna be able to spend a lot of time together without killing each other, because even when you're remote, like you spend 8 to 9 hours a day talking to each other. So if you don't like your teammates or your staff members, like it's going to be really long days, and at the end of the day, it's hard to perform at the highest level when you don't enjoy it on a daily basis. So I would say that, yeah, building the team is a big part of it in the first place, and then, yeah, on a daily basis, just managing relationships between people. It can be conflicts, it can be uh, like, especially in our team, we've been very successful, and that's also something you have to manage, because there's going to be moments where, well, you're not as successful. You need to be ready for it, and you also need to be that you also need to keep pushing. It's not because you won the last tournament that you're going to be winning the next ones, and that's something that kid needs to be uh, reminded to everyone, basically, to make sure you stay on top. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do on a daily basis.
So, so much to unpack here, and I'm so glad that we have so much to pull from here. Well, I'll focus in on, I guess, some of the key skills that you've highlighted here, and I'm just gonna shout them back out at you, and then let me know if it's an accurate picture that I've picked up on. So from both the admin and the day-to-day side of things, it sounds like organization is something you really need to be a good manager.
Yeah.
I would say relationship focused, working with the coaches, working with the larger G2 staff, working with the players and getting them to work with each other are big skills you have as a manager. And then I would also say quite pastoral. And what I mean by that is like someone who's not focused so much on the game, but just there as like a friend as well. You're also
Yeah,
a friend
exactly.
to
I
everyone
mean,
in that environment
yeah,
professionally.
yeah. I don't know if you can use the word friend, because at the end of the day, even if I think we're close, we're still working together.
Mm.
So we have to maintain this type of relationship, and yeah, sometimes it's a bit complicated, but yeah, yeah, I would agree with your description of it, and like I think you also need to adapt a lot to the group you're managing, right? Because when I joined the team, I joined a group of very experienced players, and I didn't have the role I have right now at all. Like right now, basically, like I only have 2 players left from back when I joined the team, which creates like a very different dynamic, because I've been there before most of the players and staff, so I know how things work, and I have, yeah, I would say more authority, um, yeah, over the team than what I had when I joined, because
Mm.
I was basically the last one joining. Like the players were picked up first, then the coach joined, and then I joined. So yeah, the fact that I was the new one with very small experience, also joining like very experienced players. Some of our players have been like on the CS:GO scene, for example, for almost 10 years. I had I would say I was more adapting to the players and their needs, when now I'm more like giving the new players, the line and the direction they should have,
Mm.
and to basically make them fit the the way we work in our team.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. It's when you're the new guys, like you need to kind of pick your battles, but now you're kind of they know that I'm working with you, and that comes with certain directions and things. I'm really interested in understanding kind of what is your relationship and how do you support the coach in ensuring that the team can develop, the team can peak at the right moments? What are some of the things you guys talk about in that conversation?
Um, I mean, I think we pretty much discuss everything outside of, the really macro in-game stuff that is obviously, handled by the coach, because as you said, as a manager, I'm not the one working on strats or anything. Like my knowledge of the game is very, like, I understand the game obviously, because I have to be able to recognize what makes a good player and a bad player. But at the end of the day, yeah, I would say that the coach and the IGL are the ones, dictating and working on how we're gonna play the game. But the way I support the coach is by, yeah, explaining to him how the team works, how the dynamics between the players work, and how we can better support them. Because I also think that in this team, the way the staff is working with the players is by supporting them. We don't have a coach that basically comes up with the strats and says, okay, we're gonna play like this, just follow my lead and execute. We're really in, like, it's both the IGL and, I would say, even the players, most of them, and the coach building something together that makes sense in terms of how everyone sees the game and how we want to play it. Because at the end of the day, and that's something that I think that's a mistake some teams can make sometimes. At the end of the day, the players are the ones playing the game, right? So you cannot impose on them a way to play the game if they don't understand it or if they don't believe in it.
Mhm.
So that's how I try to support the coach in making him understand how we've been working in the past and how he can support the player. But at the same time, I also need to give him, his freedom and make sure that he has a strong voice when it comes to, yeah, directing where we're gonna go when it comes to how we're gonna play the game. And yeah, in general, just making his work as easy as possible. So I would say that in our case, like, our coach has a lot of knowledge about the game, so I'm not going to teach him anything on that side. It's more, as I said, about managing the relationship between him and our players to make sure that they're on the same page and that we can, yeah, work as efficiently as possible.
So when we look at this, from my understanding, or at least in my experience, a lot of managers also spend a lot of time figuring out who you're going to practice against, who you may not practice against. Is that something that aligns with your responsibilities, or is that something that you and the coach also discuss, or with you and the team discuss?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we discussed, but in our case, I'm the one, like, literally booking our pracs, and I'm not like consulting my coach. I mean, I know what type of team we need to practice against, so that's not something he's in charge of. But that's obviously, like, if he thinks that we should try and practice against a different type of team, obviously we're gonna adjust to it, and I'm gonna adjust to it because I'm just, I would say, the one executing it. But yeah, in general, I feel like I'm trying to support him as much as possible on those, like, extra tasks, so he can just, focus on building new strategies and just making sure that he's working with the players so they can improve as a team and individuals, because that's more of an admin part to the practice side, I would say. So that's why I'm supporting him with it.
So, and I understand that this could be an off-limit question here, but what are you in general sweeping statements, what are you looking for when you're trying to find a practice opponent? Because in esports compared to traditional sports, it's a very different thing where we
Yeah.
we tend to practice. We don't have full control of our practice environment. So
Yeah.
what are you looking for to ensure that practices of high quality?
Yeah, I would say that we're pretty lucky as a game changer team because we're not the top of the top, right? There's always going to be better teams that we can practice against and that we're going to be able to learn from. So that's really how we see practice in our case. We want to practice to learn as much as possible, the to test in practice, like, what we envision in terms of how we should play the game, and just test it out. And so what we do in general is that when we're starting, for example, like on a new map, we're trying to get, I would say, opponents that are going to be, at the same level as us. But then when we're above this, initial phase, I'm always trying to get the best team possible, because I think we have a team that is really able to handle losses in practice and to understand that, okay, we're losing, sure, but look at the amount of info we're getting from it, and how much it's helping us improve. And I feel like that's not something that's possible with all the teams. Like last year with our roster, it was way harder to do that because players were getting, like, very frustrated, and the um, the our just quality of practice was, dropping when we were losing too much. So I had to manage and make sure that, okay, sometimes we practice against very strong teams, but also sometimes we get a bit easier practice so we can get some confidence back. So I would say that when it comes to, yeah, really long practice periods, we're trying to always to get the best team we can because yeah, we know we're gonna learn a lot against them. So yeah, like concretely, we're trying to practice against VCL teams as much as possible, or even VCT teams when we have the chance. It's a bit less happening less often, but yeah, when we have the opportunity, we just seize it. And well, yeah, maybe we're gonna get fucked, but at least we're gonna learn and see if what we're doing and what's working against lower tier teams is also working at this top level to yeah, just make it better. And yeah, that's how we see practice in general. And then when we get a bit closer to tournaments, I would say that the confidence is also important and that we try to maybe get a bit weaker opponents to, yeah, just basically confirm that what we've been working on works and that the level of competition we're going to face in Game Changers is not going to be able to adapt to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for example, I think we were one of the only female teams to do that. We never practice against other female teams because we know we're the best and we know that we can learn more from stronger teams, and also because we don't want to show like we want to show as less as possible to those teams when
Of
it comes
course.
to the way we play. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much how we see it.
So really interesting there. You talk about, how sometimes players might have a negative reaction when training isn't going their way in terms of that
Yeah,
good feeling of winning, because losing is never a great feeling. And I would hope every player, is very, very competitive. Um, how do you help them come to terms with understanding that winning and losing in practice isn't the be all and end all? It isn't the end of the world.
I mean we focus, I would say, more on the path to get where we want to be than the result, you know. And as long as like we make sure that from the beginning players are gonna understand that as long as there's progression on a weekly basis that we notice it, it means that we're going in the right way. And as I said, like the fact that we're never practicing against female teams, the fact that we're always practicing against better opponents, I think is a bit reassuring to the players because they're like, okay, it's a tough moment, but we know that it's gonna pay off in the end when we're gonna be facing those teams. Um, so yeah, I think that's pretty much how we try to work around that and make sure the players understand why we're doing it. Also, I think that's one of the most important thing to have players understand in like the direction we're going in and why we're going there and why we're practicing on a daily basis. So it basically means having objectives, you know, like can be team objectives, but also individual goals for just for the practice to make sense because a lot of teams just practice to practice. And yeah, I feel like it's um, it's something that can be blocking in terms of progression most of the
Mm.
time.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. At the start of this conversation, you mentioned a lot about how it's important to look after the well-being of yourself, of the coaches, of the talent of the players itself, right? Because the season can be
Yeah,
long, and being part of the G2 family, there's a lot of expectation put on it. So how
yeah,
do you guys work? Either how do you work for yourself? How do you help your team deal with that pressure? Ensure that they're staying as healthy as possible, both physically
yeah.
and or mentally.
But I feel like personally, I think I got used to it with time. Because as you said, like when you join G2, you can put a lot of pressure on yourself because it's G2. It's yeah, you don't want to disappoint. If you're in G2, you know that you're supposed to win, and yeah, you don't want to be the team that's not winning. So I think it was maybe a bit of a struggle at the beginning, but now it's something I'm just used to, and I quite enjoy it. I think, and I also think it's a good way to push everyone, you know, all the time to be like, okay, sure we won, but we want to win the next one now, so we need to keep going and keep improving. So I think that's a good way. But then when it comes to yeah the players and what we do to support them, I would say that we try to focus on what they can do also outside of the game, you know, to feel good in their bodies, in their heads, because everything is going to translate to the game at the end of the day. So yeah, we're talking with to them about sleep in general. I think that's one of the main things, of the things they're going to be eating, other things they're going to be drinking, and in I would say physical activity. I would say that it's like the four pillars of what we try to that we try to promote to the players because as I said we're mostly remote, you know, most of the time, so it's really hard to check what the players are going to be
Mhm.
doing at the end of the day. And like some of them have, different family situations. Some of them are living alone. Some of them are still with their parents. So it's hard sometimes to have control over everything. But yeah, I would say that the main one is like sleep, because that's the one you can try to control remotely the best. And then yeah, I feel like the moment the players understand that when they slept enough, when they got the right meal, when they're drinking, water, and that they're not drinking sodas or energy drinks all day, that they're gonna realize, wow, I feel good in my body. Wow, I feel good in my head. Wow, I'm playing better. When they realize that, it becomes easy. But yeah, I would say the hardest part is to get them there. And yeah, I think it just takes time. I think it just takes you need to repeat things and to to help them understand why they should give it a try at first, because a lot of players, when they come into esports, like it's not like sports, when you become a professional in esports, you might have been playing on your own in your room in the dark for years before, and you don't really know what it is to be a pro player, right? When you're into sports, you've been in academic different clubs in junior teams, and you have a pretty good idea of what it's going to take and how you're going to be living when you're a pro. You don't have that in esports right now. So I think that's also one of the part of the job as a manager, especially when you're getting young players, to make them understand that being a pro player is not only playing the game, it's also
Mhm.
doing a bunch of stuff outside of it to put you in the best conditions to perform, basically. And I would say that's the biggest challenge, like in my job, is to make sure everyone is doing everything they can to be in the best conditions, because it's so easy to be like, okay, there's this esports match in NA tonight. I'm gonna stay up until 3 a.m. because it's so hype. And
Mhm.
then the next day you come to practice, you're fucked, and your whole sleep schedule is fucked, and you're just not performing. So you get frustrated by your performance, and it's just a spiral.
Mhm.
So yeah, I feel like it's just up to me to help the players understand how it's gonna benefit them to do all those things. Until yeah, they just make it a routine.
Yeah, I mean, perfect. You've kind of like answered my follow-up question, which is like, what is some of the biggest challenges you have? But I
Yeah.
guess you've had a very successful career since joining G2. I would love to learn more about what are some of the biggest accomplishments you've had, both results wise and maybe when you've managed to turn the stone or help your players realize or achieve something more personally for them. So love to find out more there.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of results, yeah, we've been like the game changers Valorant scene is came up, I think, at the end of 2021. So there's been like three. I think there's been 12 tournaments, and
Mhm.
we won seven of them. And G2 was not even in the scene at the beginning, so we didn't play some of them. So yeah, we've been like very successful in EMEA. And then when it comes to, yeah, we've also had a world title championship in 2022. So yeah, we've been pretty successful, one of the most successful, if not the most successful team in GC. And then yeah, when it comes to like maybe not achievements, but things I'm proud of, I think it's always been the reaction we had, when facing defeat. And I think the best example for this is, well, the end of 2022, right before we won the World Championship, because we came into, so the way it works in GC, we have like three regional tournaments every year, so three EMEA tournaments. And at the end of the year, the best two or three teams from EMEA go to the World Cup. And we had won the first two tournaments of 2022, and we lost the third one in the finals. And yeah, basically the team was in a very bad shape in the days coming to the finals, which just basically explained the way, like the reason we lost it. And yeah, I feel like the thing I'm most proud of is the way we turned the situation around, because there was a lot of conflict in the team back then between the players. And it was really hard to, yeah, go from that situation to 1 month later winning the World Cup in a pretty, yeah, pretty decisive fashion, I would say. So yeah, I think it's all the conversations and yeah, all the personal sacrifices that you're gonna do and that the players are gonna do to, okay, understand that right now we have this roster. We're not going to change it 4 weeks before the World Cup. We just have to make the best out of it and, put our ego a bit on the side for this duration and yeah, just get to work and stop being maybe a bit too emotional or yeah, just do our best with the situation we have at hand. And I feel like yeah, that's probably one of my proudest moments because it was really hard for me personally to manage this situation. So I was really proud of myself and the team for just yeah turning everything around and getting this this win because yeah it was really unexpected a few weeks before based on the situation we had in the team. So but I mean there's been a few others, but generally I would say that when the players manage to make sacrifices for the team, I feel like that's the biggest win you can have as a manager when they do that for the other team and when you've been part of the change, I would say.
Yeah, I mean that's such a like a beautiful story, right? It's sometimes you have to realize like it's not only about me, it's about all the other people in this process with me in this journey. And how can we make sure everyone reaches the finish line, not just myself. I think sometimes we forget that when we're part of teams, we always try to look for our success. And I've seen my fair share of like my team might have lost, but then my players are like, "Oh, my KDA was good, so I'm still happy." But it's like
Yeah.
sometimes like that's not the healthiest mindset. Like obviously, give yourself a pat on the
Yeah.
back, but don't just focus on that because that can lead to a lot of friction in the long term.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like obviously each journey has its own challenges, its own hurdles. Who supports you when the going gets rough?
So the way we work in G2 is that for like each team on paper is supposed to have players, coach, manager. Sometimes coach is also manager, which I think could be a bit tricky, but that's the current situation in some teams. But
Mhm.
yeah, in our case, we usually have coach, manager, and above me, you have what we call esports managers. So it's people that basically have managing experience, but that are going to be overseeing a bunch of teams. So in our case, we have an esports manager for Europe, one for NA, and one for different teams. And yeah, so I have a manager above me, uh, with we're talking maybe not daily because I don't need that much support. I would say now that I've been in this team for like 3 years, but someone that is here, to support me if I need to. It can be on the admin side, it can be on managing the relationships and the situations between the players, and like it's also someone that's gonna be involved when it comes to renewing and all the contractual stuff.
Mm.
Because and I think that's a really good way to work because if I was the one who had to do that, I think it would be a bit complicated to have the relationship I have with my players. Like it's hard to have the same type of relationship with the person that is going to be involved, in your next salary potentially and your
Yeah.
next contract. So I think that's a really good way to work because yeah, my manager is not, really involved in the daily life of the players. Like the players don't know basically. If they might not know he's even here, but he's working with me, every week. And he's just making sure that we're doing our job properly, making sure that we identify the yellow flags as soon as possible before they turn into red flags. And yeah, he's going to be supporting me with all the admin stuff and, as I said, all the contractual stuff when I need some support. And then we also have like some extra staff that is not working with us like on a daily basis, but that is here if we need to have some support. So in our case, we have a performance manager who's Isma, you know pretty well, who's also working with our LEC team. And yeah, he's been supporting us for the past 2 years. A bit less this year because we changed a bit the way we approach like the sessions with him. So I would say that he's more like he's here if I need him, and he can consult, yeah, he can have sessions with the players if we feel like that's necessary. But that's pretty much it when it comes to like the direct support I'm getting. Obviously, above my manager, we have our head of esports who's also like supporting if necessary, and we have I would say also a close relationship with the whole higher management. Like the way we work is that we have WhatsApp groups with the coach, the manager, the esports manager, the head of esports, and the CEO, so Alban. And yeah, we basically talk daily if we need to talk daily in those groups. We're sharing all the like whenever we're practicing, we're dropping the YouTube links so they can hop on and watch the games and what's going on, um, whenever they want. every day we're sending like a daily debrief to keep them informed of what's going on and how things are evolving. They can interact if they want, they can support if we need to, and yeah, that's pretty much how we work. But that's also one of the things I really like about this team is that I'm pretty independent in the way it's gonna be handled. And yeah, I know that if I need support, there's gonna be someone. But yeah, after so many years with this team, I feel like I most of the time I'm fine on my own.
Yeah, I mean, knowing a bit more about how G2 is structured, obviously, because through our previous involvement and our previous conversations, I think yeah, I would agree. It's nice to have that multi-layer of support of people that you can turn
No,
to ask questions, to sense check your work. I think it's always nice to. It's kind of like that peer review process. It's just like, hey, I'm really confident in this. Does this make sense to you? Is there anything that I
yeah,
might have overlooked? It's like sometimes when you're so close to the process, you might
yeah,
tunnel vision and you might miss some really obvious things,
for sure.
or they might be able to bring in like a fresh perspective that you might never have considered because they
Yeah,
they
exactly.
they can just give you an objective opinion. And I think that's a really good way to make sure you're giving your team and your players the best service possible, right? So they can have the best experience, they can achieve as much as possible.
Yeah.
Now, you've been in esports for a considerable time now, as a student, as a coach, working in with the football team and their esports division, and now G2. What are some of the biggest learnings you've had personally that have helped shape your career and shape the way you approach your job?
Um, I think I've learned how to like what it takes to have a team like a winning team, how to build a winning team. And it basically comes down to what I was saying, like you need to get people that obviously have the talent and the work ethic to be top players, but you also need people that are going to be able to, yeah, work together on a daily basis for very long hours and for, well, at least a year. And I feel like it takes time to find the right people to do so. And as I said, like it's been almost 3 years, and I feel like this year might be the first year where I'm like, okay, I don't want to replace anyone. I have
Mm.
the 5 players I want. I have the coach I want, and it's just about putting in the work to make sure that we get the results we want. It's like it's a first for me to have this feeling. So yeah, I feel like yeah, I've been learning from my previous players and from my previous staff members and from the different managers I had how to build this type of team. And I also think it comes down to, well, the personalities you have on the team. And I feel like, yeah, you need to have both players and staff that get along, that see the 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 process to get where we want to be. And yeah, just have the same vision to how we're gonna get there. Um, so yeah, I think that's the main takeaway without getting into too much details.
No, of course, of course. And then I guess the last question that I formally have is what's advice you'd give to people coaching now, maybe who might not have the same resources as GT, because that obviously helps,
Yeah,
I would say, a bit.
yeah,
But what advice could you give to a coach, to a manager, or even to aspiring players or current players, as they try and achieve the best they can?
yeah. I mean, I think as a coach or as a manager, just try to build a project that shares the values you have, because at the end of the day, it's gonna be successful if, yeah, the vision you have is aligned with all the members on the team. So I think that would be the main advice. And then for players, well, for players, it's so hard as a player, to make it. Um, I feel like the scene is developing. We have more and more players, whether it's in GC or like in the main scene. But yeah, it's really hard. I feel like especially the tier two scene is not developed enough, and it's um, it's tough. I feel like the way I see things in general in life is that if you're passionate about something, you should just give everything to make it, which means, yeah, obviously playing the game, but also learning about what it is really to be a pro player as soon as possible. Because if you're gonna be, in an interview with the manager or any staff member, and that you have the, like, if you're in the interview already, it's because you have the talent and you're good enough to be in the team, I guess. But they're gonna be, even more interested in your profile if you know what it really takes when it comes to the amount of work you're gonna have to put in, when it comes to the amount of work outside of the game you're gonna have to put in to be in such a team. So I think that's things you can work on, even before making it to, yeah, to the professional level. But yeah, as I said, it's tough because when you're not full time, when you're not paid full time, and you most of the time have to be, yeah, taking a break from your studies, or you're doing your studies and yeah, practicing at the same time, or just living at your parents, it's tough, and I feel like it's the most important part of the journey as a pro player. Those years where you're not making a living out of it, but you're still, giving everything to try to make it. I feel like that's the years that are going to build the character of a future pro. And as I said, those ones are the most important ones, because they're really going to show how much you want it and how much you want to make it. And I feel like, yeah, just not giving up. If that's really the one thing you want to do, if you have the talent and if you're able to work enough to get there, just keep trying until, well, you cannot. But yeah, I feel like there's also a lot of people who make it just because, they kept going, and at some point they were good enough to be there. Especially when it comes to staff members, I feel like there's people just, getting they're just done with esports and all the bullshit we're facing sometimes, and it just opens up for other people that, well, they were maybe not as talented or not as smart about how they should work at this role at the beginning, but yeah, they've just been sticking around, and they've just been learning more and more, and now they get the spot. So I also think that's another way to get in.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree to everything you've said. Then I guess I know I said last question, but the final question before we wrap things up here is, where do you go to learn as a staff member? How do you improve yourself individually?
Yeah, I think that's one of the trickiest parts, to be honest, especially before you join a big team. Um, I feel like in G2 we have this great network of managers, obviously, because we have a lot of teams. And as a rookie coming into G2, I learned so much from my managers, to be honest, because they most of the time had experience on different games, um, and more than me. So I got just to learn from, asking questions and asking for advice, and sometimes just, getting the advice. So just observing how they work also was really useful from time to time. As you know, we also had like this monthly sessions in the past in G2, where all, like, it's basically a 1 or 2 hours meeting where with all the team managers, all the coaching in all the games, where we just get together and we discuss about, yeah, the things we're facing in our daily lives and how we work around it. And I feel like it's super useful to just learn from people with more experience that have, well, maybe not more experience, but just people that have faced different situations. I think in general, like, you always have something to learn from someone else, because they've most likely not had the exact same experience as you. So there's probably something to get out of this conversation. And yeah, when you're not in a big club like this, I feel like reading books or just watching videos about, successful managers in regular sports is pretty useful too. That's something I was doing. I should be doing it still. I think I'm not doing it enough. But yeah, that's for sure something where you can learn a lot, because I think sports and esports, at least when you're a manager, are pretty similar when it comes to how you can, handle situations, because at the end of the day, you're just working with human beings. And I feel like if tomorrow I didn't want to work in esports, I could also be a manager in another industry. And, because at the end of the day, it's just working with human beings and understanding what they need to do their job well, and yeah, trying to support them as much as possible in getting that. So yeah, I think reading books about experienced people is super useful too.
Is there a book or a video or anything that you might suggest, something that's a personal favorite of yours?
Let me get my list. um I mean, there's one I really like. It's the one from the Chicago Bulls coach. I think it's
Oh,
called
11 Rings.
11 Rings. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's literally right in front of me. It's the
Yeah,
book
well,
I'm reading currently.
I love this book, and I feel like the good thing in sports is that when you manage a team, you have so many different profiles in front of you, because in esports, like, most of the time you have 5 people, which is
Mm.
a pretty small amount of people in the end. We don't have subs most of the time. But when you're in sports, you have the main team, you have the big superstars, you have the more support players, the rookies coming in, you have the bench warmers, you have so many different profiles to manage that there's so much so many interesting things to learn from the people who have been managing so many different people. So yeah, I would give this one.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think I learned a lot, and everything you've been saying is things I've been thinking about quite a lot recently myself, because I've been thinking about what really makes a team function, and it made sense to talk to a team manager to help shed some insight on that. So yeah, thank you for your time, and we hope to see you on the Transforming Esports channel or the community again in the future.
For sure. Thanks for having me.